Alan Clements Uncensored. Thank you for listening to my podcast. A few notes about the presentation. After years of scripted talks, many of them methodically outlined, some even memorized, at least in part, I decided to drop that style and simply speak spontaneously from my heart. So that's what I do. My talks are raw and improvisational. I make them up as I go along. In addition to my World Dharma talks, I also offer at times readings from my books, Instinct for Freedom, A Future to Believe in, The Voice of Hope, and Wisdom for the World. I also offer readings of my personal notes, sometimes guided meditations, dialogues from my World Dharma public forums, interviews from radio and television, and sections from my show, Spiritually Incorrect Meets Relationship Incorrect, The Great Reckoning, and the occasional conversation with someone I find interesting. I also want to express my deep gratitude to the people who have made donations to me, either a one-time or recurring donation, either on the support page of my website, alanclements.com, or pledged a monthly amount as little as $1, perhaps $3 or even $5 a month, through my Patreon site. If you're inspired to do so, you can support this podcast and my work by making a monthly pledge at Patreon. That's patreon.com, patreon.com/Alan Clements, and there you'll find my page. You can use a credit card or pay through PayPal, and your monthly pledge, that's what it takes, just a few minutes to set up, allows me not only to do my work, it allows me to create my art, use my voice, speak my Dharma, free of commercial consideration or advertisers. Thank you from my heart for taking the time to listen to my podcast, and thank you for your generous support. I hope you enjoy the presentation. He's talking about for 25 long years I've been waiting for 25 years I've been waiting and longing for freedom. And I bring this up because there's such a marginalization sometimes of spiritual passion by deflecting longer, deeper convictions into the mediocrity of being present. And so this developmental issue becomes very important. Like, what is your heart really longing for, Alan? What do you really, really want deep inside? And you can really manage your mind, you can deal with consciousness, you can be present with a sound and food, you can walk mindfully, you can meditate. But do you really have a relationship to the deeper impulsation of your soul, is my point. And that's a rare friendship that supports each other in that level of passionate, impassioned artistry, the deeper impulses of pre-religion, where you go, okay, what is it that I want to make good in this life on my soul? Yes, liberation, enlightenment, Buddhahood, but for me, at the end of this book tour, I wanted something else. And so I thought of U Parlay. And I was in Vancouver at the time, and I thought about his life and what he said to the audience. For 6 years, I've been waiting for this moment. I said, I'm not going to make wrong what I've been doing. I want to make right what I'm going to do. This has been a catalyst to see that little candle light in the darkness. It's not that dark, even. Nice book, lots of people, made money. I said, what is my waiting for this moment? Reflection. And I said, I want to use my voice, but I want to use it on my terms. I don't want to be a really spiritually correct Buddhist meditation teacher anymore. I didn't really even know what it was that I wanted to say, although I was in a relationship. And we talked a lot about endless topics. We'd done a lot of experimental this and that. I won't even use the words. And I had a kind of free form with thought, but I was very much accustomed to this is what you do as your vocation.
You teach retreats where people sit quietly and you give very standardized, although very interesting at times, talks on classical Buddhism mixed with an American kind of 60s upbeat generational theme. But it wasn't working anymore. I wrote a book about it. It was like, next. There's nothing to go back to in America. What's next? Not living in default. So, Uparle then said that I know what I'm about to do will land me back in prison. And as it was told to me, he explained to the audience, but this is what my life is, and so be it. Freedom is more important than fear. And so he did his 60-minute satire on Big Brother, mild, humorous, funny. People laughed. I've got it on film, Netflix, and people were going to make a film out of all these things, but it got abandoned when Aung San Suu Kyi was vilified, wrongly. And sure enough, when he ended, 2 days later, when he went home to Mandalay, I was just there recently, he was arrested and put back into a hard labor camp, pounding rocks, 20 hours a day, for 7 years, for that 60 minutes. Yeah. Super rad, right? Way out. And I'm in Vancouver thinking about Uparle. I want to use my voice, I want to be daring. So I went down to a local theater where I always loved theater, but never had any training in theater. So I went to a local theater, a really elegant theater, 500-seat theater, an old theater, and asked if I could just visit inside during the day and just see what it would be like to be on a stage. And my belief in the stage, I'm not trained in theater and this and that, but pretty much anything goes. I like comics and satirists, and you've read Peter Brook's work, the Shakespearean director, English. Amazing, Liberty, you know, the Empty Stage, or I read those books and it really, I felt like a mechanical man, very angular, very trained and not contrived, but I was in an orthodox box with a high degree of liberty, but it wasn't really who I was today. I wasn't in evolution. So I went to the theater and there was some people there doing their thing and they left for lunch and the microphone was there. And I stood on that stage. I remember this. It was terrifying for me to think, imagining this thing was filled with people. I had no idea what I would do or say. I was so accustomed to a different context. And so I left that stage thinking that it was an impossible dream to think of ever doing something, because I had no idea what I would do, how I would do it, how it would happen, who would come. Anyway, I'm leaving through the lobby and the manager says, "What did you think of the theater? What do you think?" I said, "Yeah, it's amazing theater." And he asked, "What do you do?" And quite frankly, I heard it as a kind of shaming. What do I do? I kind of wanted to say, the last thing I wanted to say was I was a meditation teacher. Now it's sort of in vogue and cool. At that time, 2002, 2003, it was like former Buddhist monk, meditation teacher, and not really connecting at all. So I lied. You know Bill Hicks?
Yeah.
Amazing, huh? Amazing. So I was really down on Bill Hicks at that time, and I said, I wouldn't venture to say I was a comedian. I was a spoken word artist. I said I'm a spoken word artist. He said, "Oh, really?" He took interest. It was like it really grabbed his attention. He says, what are you doing? I said, and then I really dug a hole. And I lied again. It's the power of a lie, by the way. I lied again. I said, I'm writing a new show. And he absolutely took riveting interest, and he says, what are you writing? And I knew I was really in over my head now, so I had to really think of something really cool. But I was quite a fan of Bill Maher at the time, who did a show called Politically Incorrect. I just stole the title and said, I do a show called Spiritually Incorrect. And he just lost it. He said, that's amazing. Do you want to do it here? Like that. I went terrified. I said, no, it's okay. He said, come on, do you want to premiere it here? Are you writing it? When is it done? And I said to him, yeah, sure, then I'll do it. Yeah, do it right here. So we went into his office. He looked at his calendar book. I've said this 1,000 times, but it's really vulnerable to speak about. He says, what night of the week do you want to do it? Do you want to do a week, a 6-week run? What do you want? And I said, I'll do it on a Saturday night. I knew there wouldn't be any bookings on a Saturday night because it's one of the most popular theaters. So he went September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. 18 months out, there was a free Saturday night. He said, do you want it? I said, I'll take it. I felt so good about doing that and walked out, and for the next 15 months was terrified that I had done that. I quit everything after that, went into seclusion for 3 months and wrote this first show that I never even used. But that became my first night out on that stage, September 18th, 2003 or 4, in which there were like 250 people that came out. And I just produced 270 shows after that and moved from the vocation of Dharma teacher to the theater based on Uparle. And I bring this up by you're asking a deeply felt question on your vocation of being. You keep repeating, bringing this up. And I would invite even a deeper dialogue. Okay, it's one thing to control and be aware of the consciousness of consciousness and how to inhabit consciousness more peacefully and reverentially. That's cool. But it's sort of ordinary. I mean, you kind of expect that you want to take care of your own mind. You're sensitive to the environment, you're sensitive to the interior. But what do you want to make good on in this time, this life, that really defines your epitaph? This is who Ian was. I'm not saying get on the stage of whatever it is that's on your stage, but maybe there is something in there that gives you the salvation, the spiritual salvation, the psychological liberty, the common aliveness that just makes everything else really, really important, that you really get into psychological, spiritual, physical, existential shape. This is the time of your life kind of thing. And I remember when I got out on those stages, and I'm really fond of the spontaneity, and I'll close with this, not to get too carried away with me. I made a vow to myself at that first night, don't ever repeat the same event twice. So I went out unscripted. Although you tell some of the same stories, but you tell them differently. And trusting in the spontaneity of freedom being more important than fear. So, if I can be a friend to you and help you, support you, share ideas with you on what it might be to emerge into something deeper, maybe this conversation, maybe it touched them, maybe I missed the point completely, but please, include me if you want in what it is that you're looking for, dreaming for, hoping to achieve, evolve in yourself, that gives you the confidence and the joy to really, more than you've accomplished, live your soul. So. Josh?
First off, I just really want to thank you.
You're very welcome, Josh.
Yeah. And I showed up today with a lot of existential angst and just churning inside. And that first talk that you gave, you were hitting all these points inside, these questions I obviously wasn't even voicing, right? But you were hitting the interior states, right? And I heard you talk about consciousness and that interplay and that ability to really go beyond the spoken and the word. And that was there, it was live, it went out even after we stopped, right? That experience of consciousness. So I would love for you, I'd love to hear more about that, maybe experiences about that, stories about that you've had, because that really, it became in that moment the hope and the medicine for all the turmoil and angst inside, is there is this other mystery play happening underneath the surface of us all, right? There is this interconnection and dialogue occurring. And so I'd love to hear you talk more about that.
Am I getting you correct? Like, talk about the vocation of consciousness as the primary reason to be alive? What is?
I think, yeah.
What does it mean to inhabit consciousness consciously, to make good on the promise of the most liberating expressions of consciousness within consciousness?
Yes.
How to employ the most liberating states of consciousness?
Yes.
To inhabit consciousness in the most heightened possibilities, in the most human ways, things like that?
Yeah, and that mysterious interplay that happens.
Interplay with?
When you can give a talk and have it be touching the discussion, the dialogues within other people without them ever expressing those things, right? Those like beyond the scene movements and interactions and mystery play behind it all.
See, that's interesting you touched that. It's a very personal question. I appreciate you asking that. My first response, which has almost nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it's personal, is that you have to be willing to be ridiculed, chastised, judged, self-indulgent, to find the vocation of the way you make love is right for you. And people think I'm a fool for gifting my work. I don't even take fees for sessions. People can criticize you the way you speak and think and feel. The spontaneity of your soul on the terms of your integrity, living and playing in those three energetic epistemologies as oxygen for integrity, finding emotionality in words that you find appropriate to feel and define your identity in evolution. Studying language is really crucial. Not being satisfied with ordinary definitions. Expand language based on the experience of your own perception. Be in fidelity to research and accountability and professionality in where you source material. At the same time, be willing to play in the field of the poet and give yourself that chance to fumble and crumble and riff and go mad. Watch people like Storm Z riff on his, his grime. Listen to hip-hoppers and rappers and rockers. If you go far back, just look at some of the more spontaneous, long versions of some of the epics. Stairway to Heaven, the most played song in human history. And you go, I love looking at people make art. Not so much spiritual principles. I am so not comfortable with most of the propaganda. I use the word very specifically. Very few people ever ask, what do you see as spiritual propaganda? It's too threatening. You can feel it in your body. More to my point, though, is to be willing to be Chomsky-esque with, not confronting it, being smart. You're a smart man. Be willing to see where we're locked down into familiar commercial concepts that appeal to our logic and our emotions, but they're really not valid to the purpose of freedom and heightened expressions of curiosity. Who are the great savants? Creators. Religious, trans-religious savants who are willing to think and be persecuted. I'm not saying that's the only paradigm. I'm not down with it. I want to be a lover. My church, listen, if you're threatened, I'm not going to do too much, to challenge you, but if you find that what I'm saying is helpful, please have mercy on me, please. But it's a lie. I don't know how else to say it. I just don't agree with it. I'm not going to be polite about it. I don't think killing people is appropriate in the name of a lie called your religion. Sorry, Mr. Allah, you got it wrong. Or at least the inhabitants of the religion got it wrong, or both. I've even confronted Buddhism as a totalitarian doctrine. That's a real winner. A doctrine of the whole. But that's my own limited box to say that. So, how to freelance. Get yourself in front of people, a friend or two or three, and allow yourself to get on the stage of your own existence and riff from your soul. Document the evidence, have it transcribed, learn to hone, edit, evolve. But what's your principal vortexes of truth? Call them chakras, call them whatever you need to call them. But these are the definitions of my identity. And those identities are rooted in conscience and integrity. Stay steadfast, Alan, in ethical wisdom. Have moral courage to be brave in truth-telling and listening to the truth of others. That kind of things. So, okay, where do I take away from this conversation things that are meaningful? I've studied Buddhist psychology. That's very appealing to me. I would say there's some preliminary books that really help one to understand the contents of consciousness in some of the most precise ways. Way back after my monastic life, I bought all of Jung's books. I apprenticed for a period of time with one of Jung's actually students. And he was an extraordinary help to me to understand the uniqueness of psychology rather than the formulation of shadow. Every psyche is different. There is no Jungianism. I mean, look at John Perry, look him up online. He was my next door neighbor when I lived in Marin in San Francisco, post-monastic life. And psychiatrist, he was the president of the Jung Institute for 10 years, post-Jung. Books on madness. He was mad, but elegant in his freedom to pursue the intimacy of the structures of psychological understanding. Be a savant, be an autodidact. Take the books, but take the words and feel them into your soul. Whatever your sexual preferences are, your romantic preferences, men or women, boys or girls, it doesn't matter. But find salvation through intimacy. Some of my greatest teachings and teachers and gifts have been the woman. I'm heterosexual. It blows my mind how inept I can be. Post-enlightened relationship to the next is like unthinkable. How did that happen? So I say that not so much to point a fault at me or someone else. One of the greatest things that I can see that I'm not greatly exemplifying, but is humility, modesty. Vulnerability is a cliched word today, but modesty and humility are more important. It shows a high degree of respect that you don't know a lot in the face of those who may know and the face of existence. We're overwhelmed by life, right? To say that life is a tsunami is calling it a small wave. That which will take us gave us birth. So what is it that you're on about? Why are you on about it? For me, it's the oxygen of consciousness, which is freedom. I love people who dance freely, speak freely, act freely. I might not like it, but I like that they're living freely. They're keeping alive that which has given me the greatest hope in life. That being a human, you can use your hands, you can use your voice, you can use your thoughts, you can use your conscience. You can be a revolutionary to help support the freedom of others. So compassion. Takeaway, what are the key qualities of consciousness that you want to evolve? Authenticity. What does wisdom mean? What is patience? What is generosity? Basic human goodness, decency. What is your vocation? Your vocation. So, studying language, study meaning, become very good at definition, take your thoughts and write them all the time, look at the world of art, be influenced by art and artists, watch artists, how they create art. I was just watching a video the other day of, I didn't know of this particular hip-hop singer. Joy Best is his name, I'm not sure. He went from nowhere to a #1 hit song that had something to do with Party of It. And it was in the New York Times, and he had just did a little bit of an Instagram rap that alluded to his money and his new mansion in the Hollywood Hills. And some people from the hood came in and killed him and robbed him. He was young. And that's the only way. I'd never heard of him, but I read a lot about art and listen. And so I did a bit of a search on him, and I looked at his life, I looked at his music. He came from the hood, and within a 6-month, 9-month period, he'd been riffing his whole life, and someone got a hold of him, someone heard of a demo, another big producer, and he went from absolutely hood life to the top. Quick, one of the fastest rising hip-hop singers ever. And went from truly nothing to jewels and bling bling and all the things that come with that level of success for him. And he was murdered, and I felt like, oh wow, 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 wow. So I looked at some of his songs, and I have to say, I'll give you the title of I'll give you his name later. I listened to his songs, and I went, this dude is over the top talented. And I listened to his song, and I went and listened to the lyrics, and the lyrics are like, they're so not me. But he's got one of the best producers. I looked up the producer's name and looked at his stuff. This guy is so amazingly talented with producing amazing hip-hop music, really catchy. And I noticed I do yoga often listening to his music now. Anyway, the point being is I went and found a video of him talking about how he created the song that I'm listening to. I found it. And you could hardly understand him in what he's saying, but it's breathtakingly just beautiful. He's so humble about, how did you put those words together? And it's like, they make unbelievably no sense. And yet, you get it. It's so pure to him. That was what I got from him. And I said, Alan, who are you upholding? You've given it up so many years ago. You're the audience of one today, if you're lucky to have two. You know? But are you really going to speak today and relate today and walk today and breathe today from that level of pure, innocent, creative, this is me at my best? And document the evidence of your poetry. Be smart. So that's some of the things that I look at, you know. It's one thing to read poetry like Rumi and Rilke. It's kind of like, it's okay. But, you know, then you get a little bit more like the edgier stuff that kind of like provoke and move you into kind of a transangular dance. And it puts me in touch with, like, what do I want to say? And that's the last frontier for me, what I was sharing with Ian, is like, it's one thing to share spontaneously, but where the discipline for me is, if I were to create an album, because I see more of what I do as a craft than a teaching. I like the craft of interrelated presence. I like the poetry of shared space. Whether it works or not, I don't know. But I like the vocation of the energetic spoken word mixed with the metaphor of entheogen. So how to take entheogenic, organic, chemical creation and learn how to oxygenate those molecules within the collective as something unnecessary to put on your tongue. And so using these metaphors, what are your metaphors, gives you the chance to really have everything you need in the most organic, life-giving, yogic, meditative, elevating way, rather than so many downsides to, God, I just had a creative burst for the last 3 days and I've got like 3 weeks of recovery. You want art that nurtures and elevates and strengthens, gives back to you. It's the nutrient of God. And so what is your nutrient that really gives you that reason to walk on water, to give up your vocation? You know, you're Christian, I'm Christian, we've had backgrounds in Christianity. You know, Jesus didn't go to Harvard to get a PhD in God consciousness. He didn't look for a booking to get on Oprah to sell his idea of liberation. Yes, I'm mocking it. I'm mocking spiritual credentials. He took his shoes off, grew his hair, gave up his job, and just walked the land. There's a metaphor there for us. It may be that you get in your Lamborghini and do bling bling and put on the music that you want. It could be the complete opposite. But is it right for you? You know me well enough from these few days that we spent together that I've done many things that are very marginal, very questionable. I've woken up on sidewalks in multiple cities, not knowing how I found myself lying in that particular place at dawn. Post-enlightenment. Purposely putting ourselves in uncomfortable circumstances that give your conscience vital blood, actually. I never became more alive until I decided to support Burma's struggle for freedom and found myself, through the serendipity of choice and circumstance, to be with these boys and girls in an apocalyptic jungle setting where there was ethnic cleansing. The provocation of that embedded, carved information both out of me and in me. So we're comfortable in Ubud now. It's provocative, but where do you want to take yourself outside, maybe, when time permits, that gives you the chance to learn in the curriculum of life? Out of the meditation center, so many teachers, just an adjunct to this, so many people that practice meditation, meditate today to teach it. I never got involved in the Dharma to teach it. It just doesn't, I'm not interested. I'm more into the sharing space of it, but you can very much lock down in the curriculum of capitalism around consciousness if you're not careful, because it'll co-opt you. Next thing you know, you're a coach, and you gave up your own liberty for that certainty of, and I don't judge it, the rent gets paid. Namaste. I'm in a suitcase with a small hotel bill. There are prices to pay for your art. They're small prices. While the larynx and the heart and the lungs, there's oxygen. Use your voice, use your hands. What's your dream? What's the book that you want to write? People often come to me about writing books, about being on stage, giving talks. What would you say to your best friend, your muse, your lover, your goddess, your priest? You had an hour or two, and he and you or she and you are sitting there. Speak to her and him or whatever in exactly the way in which you want to communicate. And then write that, document it, transcribe it. There's your book. Don't edit it. A little bit. No, be careful. Just like this hip-hop singer. He's explaining how he wrote these lyrics. And for some reason, the hip-hop literati around the world saw those lyrics in the combination of his cadence and producer's skills to become a number one on, the top 40 charts. I mean, from a total nobody on a block somewhere in the hood. And the competition must be ferocious. Talent beyond talent. Have you seen 8 Mile, the movie? No, look it up. Look it up, and it's the story of hip-hop and Really, it's really interesting to see the spontaneity of riffing. And then there's the action of those who really supersede the poet, for me. They're the doers. The poetry of their actions, this family member to the young blind girl. It's one thing to talk about the musical, vocal talent of an artist. It's another thing to talk about the salvation of an ally that gives you eyes in life where you're thought to be better off dead. So couple these words with direct actions, which you know very well. What are the things that you want to do in the immediacy of your environment? You know, we're confined, so to speak, right now, but not to see the word as confined. How do I text? What do I want to say? Do I really feel it? Those kind of things. So, anything else? Take your time. Topics, questions. You know, one of the, I'll close with this, we'll take a break and come and sit. What time is it, by the way? 10:54? Okay, last. Deliberate reflections on advantages and disadvantages. I would suggest in a practical way, take 3 complicated, complex states of consciousness that you more consistently struggle with. Blame, anger, judgment, stinginess, greed, just 3 states. And when you have time in your day, in your week, write down what are the limits, one by one, of those states. What's the disadvantage of me living in that state? What's wrong with this state? How does it compromise me? What's inherent in that state where I lose as a result of it? Just any way you need to look at its shortcoming. You know, your dog pees on your sofa, you train him to pee somewhere else. Okay, you don't want to pee. You want to see the disadvantage of peeing in the wrong place. So anger, greed, blame, judgment. I mean, there are people, I won't even ask who online or watching, but there are people who are physically violent. It's not uncommon within spiritual psychological circles to see domestic violence, home violence. People use language as daggers. People use physical objects to harm. People go about spending decades undermining another person's credibility and sanctity and safety. We know that. The family justice courts are filled with acrimony and horror. So these states of mind, although may be mild in our lives at the moment, under circumstances of duress, they can really amplify. Who you are today under the comfort of this context is one thing, Alan, but when the context becomes more complicated, you become a very different person. So just look at the disadvantages, and then what is the opposite of that state in your own terms? What's the opposite of something, even something like apathy, something simple? I just feel, you know, just gonna hang by the pool again. Just read a book. I know, you do it, honey. Let's do it together. You're always wanting us to be together. We're always together, especially now. We're together 29 hours a day, for God's sake. Do it for me. Whatever the dialogue is, it's subtle. What's the disadvantage of that state of mind? And what is the opposite of that state? One of them may be courage. One may be compassionate. The courage to be considerate. What is courage? What is the advantage of courage? And then coupled with this, if you want to go a little bit deeper, what are the guardians of your, what are the known and slightly obscured guardians of your, I want to use the word neurosis, but that's a little bit too not right for me. The guardians of your ordinary. What guards your anger? What needs to be in place for you to feel that anger is a valid expression of who you are? And write that down and begin to learn to have a Dharma dialogue with ourselves about these disadvantages. And then the opposite would be, what are the states, what are the thoughts, what are the reflections for their opposites? And what are the conditions that might help the arising of their opposites? And then you begin to have what we call Dharma literacy. You have an interior Dharma dialogue. But what I was going to say here is that among reflections, another one you might find very valuable, we did it the other day, which is this meditation on non-fixation, where you're in this, figuratively speaking, I, as meditator, am sitting in this co-occupied invisibility with a non-fixed wisdom. I'm in the primordial flow of perception, thoughts, images, ideas, physical sensations, life, gravity, time, circumstance, life, disease, death, people, events. There is no place I wish to fixate. I'm going to practice 30 minutes of non-fixation. And so write down for yourself ways in which you could understand non-fixation as a felt, inspired reality, to embody that as a living, breathing experience when you sit, rather than just simply as an idea that you went into the sitting with. Implant, this is called, for me, implant intelligence in intelligences. This is why I use the word mindful intelligence. Implant intelligence. If you need to talk to yourself that all things are impermanent, anicca vata sankhara upadavaya, that one, all things are changing. Right now, we'll end with this beginning. Right now, we're practicing non-grasping by simply having open hands to reflect an open mind. I'm going to hear but not keep. I'm going to feel but not grasp. If grasping arises, I'll notice the sensation of grasping, and my determination here is to feel the relaxation of grasping as an appropriate aesthetic to my understanding. I'm not going to force my hand back open and judge myself, oh my God, you grasped. That'll be a mindfulness of the thought, but non-fixation. So here we are sitting today in Ubud, Bali, Indonesia, on the planet, in the galaxy, in the universe, blah, blah, blah. And okay, what is there to fixate on? Where I go, I want my meal when I want it. I want my shower tonight when I want it. I want to make sure the motorbike has a good driver I'm on, it's got plenty of gas, and I want to go to my destination. There's lots of things that I'm fixated on. But guess what? It may not happen that way. So one of the reflections here in non-fixation is be absolutely available, joyously awakened, as the monks in Burma talk about. I will die, can die at any moment. It is stupid to be fixated on form. Yes, you could have some kind of skillful means that you hope it happens, but by and large, why listen to that propaganda when you can be free? Be free to be a snowflake coming and going, right? Hold me accountable. Please do. Remind me of what I'm saying. So anicca vata sankhara means that I'm willing not to die, but to stop the propaganda of death. Take the demon out of it. Take the projection out of it. Maybe it's actually not so bad. After all, we're on a plane of existence where we've got the coronavirus and we've got genocide and we've got rape. I'm not like giving a rave for the other side, but if there's a way that we can communicate and I'm there and you're still here, I'll tell you, I hope it's not hell, but I guarantee you, I hope it's better than this shit. I don't see it working out here. So I'm all into non-fixation of thinking this is some sacred garden. Sorry, I don't want to play in your party. I want to play with you, but I don't see this as a field of safety. So talk to yourself in a way that reflects support for non-fixation. Question the church of propaganda. What is your propaganda? Anicca. So I'm in change. Everything here is in change. So when we meditate, the reflection on embodied wisdom. Don't wait to meditate in order to become wise. Embody wisdom where we are, as we are, as purely as you can feel it. Unmitigated, unconditional reception to the embodied awakening that we hope to have through time. So drop the propaganda of time. Another reflection on non-fixation. Imagine right now we decided we're going to take the time out of space. That means we're basically human snowflakes dancing upward rather than down. Immortality is irrelevant to this moment everywhere. I'm taking fear out of the equation more so than I want to be in flow. I'm going to basically use this marble to do a contact dance with wisdom. Allow yourself to be radically wise. These meditations support that rather than the gradual transformation through mindfulness of thought and feeling and taste, which is okay, but it's a little bit like potty training so that you don't pee on the sofa. But then play with the wisdom of, okay, the reflection on freedom. The reflection on freedom. So often I watched Chris yesterday waiting for her food, and I was really admiring her that she didn't look like she was waiting. To me. Just sat there in a way that was just sitting there without even just sitting there. It was just like, I'm not waiting for the food. That was my projection. But it could be true. I remember in Burma, we were encouraged in the monastery to not anticipate, but to live more in the actualization of where we are and in gratitude. So when we sat down, the impulsion is to, finally we get to eat. Now I can kind of relax my meditation a little bit and kind of like, boy, I wish we had had chicken rather than just, celery. Thinking. And they would say, take the time, the future, out of eating. So when you take one mouthful of food, you put it in your mouth, you lower your hand, you take your hand off your chopsticks or your fork, and you give the mouthful of food the integrity to be your lover. You're just taking momentum and habit, time and death out of ordinary. And so practicing there non-fixation and the incredible vulnerability of being a conditioned being that without that morsel of food, you eat it so well it becomes, I want to say, both medicine and sacrament. Sacrament more in the sense that it allows us yet another moment to be in this ambient presence together, right? It's not just the food. The food is just the propaganda, the delight, the hope, the preference is all cultural, political, social propaganda. It's all ordinary. It's banal. Blah, blah, blah. Stop your blah, 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 Alan. So practice the wisdom of reflection. anicca vatasankara. The mouthful of food is anicca. You eat that with such momentary grace. Now I'm saying to myself here as we end, I might remember this once a day. So be it, right? So let us practice these wisdom teachings as the oxygen, the vitality that animates our awakening, our freedom, and gives us the freedom to overcome self-centeredness, and comes right back to the family member with the blind girl, to look at creative ways to befriend each other by giving back, opening eyes, giving hope and resilience and patience when the world wants you dead. So, from my heart to yours, thank you for allowing me to be in my truth with you. And let's take about 10 minutes to do what we need to do and come back. We'll have a meditation before lunch. Thank you.
That has been Alan Clements Uncensored. Thank you for listening. You can find the entire list of my podcasts at alanclements.com, along with my books and upcoming events and live broadcasts. In addition, you can also book a private session with me if you wish by phone or Skype on the website. If you're a regular listener or simply feel moved to support my work, you can make a one-time donation or a recurring donation, a tax-deductible one, in any amount you feel comfortable, either on the support page of alanclements.com or a monthly pledge through my Patreon site at patreon.com/AlanClements. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and thank you for sharing word of it among your friends and on social media. Thank you from my heart. Until the next time, blaze on with fearless love.